A great program would be where supermarkets are no longer allowed to throw out food where they have to donate it. They did this in France. They started this program called Ugly Fruits and Vegetables. I don't know the French word for it, Ugly Fruits and Vegetables, where supermarkets were no longer able to throw food out. It had to go to food banks and food rescues. And so there's the whole host of things that could happen around food waste. The other thing is a lot of producers just overproduce food because it's easier to overproduce food and then it just gets thrown out and wasted. So again, part of this issue, up until 5 years ago, this was never even talked about. And so now people are talking about it, and so now we actually have to come up with ways to deal with this. I'm actually working with a company right here in New Jersey that they developed a process by which they could take actual waste, dairy waste and meat and produce waste from supermarkets and turn it into feed, pet food, food to feed chickens and cattle, pigs, and also pet food. So it's a for-profit company. So there's a lot of effort now being made to alleviate this issue of food waste.
We have another question. Another one back there. Hey, Phil, your daughter's class is getting energetic.
I'd just like to say, first off, thank you so much for coming here. Really, I love the words that you're just saying here right now. You're really making a lot of sense, and I love it. But my question for you is that this towards seniors that are going into college. Do you think there should be more classes that should teach them like how to cook for themselves when they can get food? Because a lot of times when they get into college, like they don't know really what to do, and again, they'll go for the cheapest thing that they can afford. And again, like it's not good for them, but like there are like a bunch of things that they could do to like cook for themselves, which could help a lot. So I was just wondering, like, what's your opinions on that?
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, I actually think that we should go back to teaching home ec in grammar school and in grade school. So I work with. I don't have an answer to. Well, listen, I think there's plenty of ways that people can learn how to cook. There's plenty of organizations out there. I'm working with an organization called Feast, and that's one of the programs that they do. They go into communities and they actually teach people how to cook, really to learn how to stretch a dollar. Because if you can go out there and cook, you can cook healthier meals for your family as opposed to relying on fast food and overly processed foods. And so, but then there's another component there. Listen, a lot of people that are struggling, they're working 2 jobs. You know, you got to realize 40% of the people that receive SNAP have someone working at least full-time in the family. So we're talking about a large population that they're working. They're working minimum wage jobs and struggling to feed their family. So there's also an issue with time, because it does take more time to actually cook. And so finding ways to cook where you can actually put fast, nutritious meals on the table is really important. There's plenty of organizations out there that have programs that teach people how to do that.
Tom, we have time for one more question. If there's one more out there, this gentleman here in the middle.
Hi, Tom. I'm Patrick. I'm an undergraduate student here at Kane. You talk about climate change, especially as one of the ways to talk about food insecurity. And so I was just wondering kind of your thoughts on the Green New Deal, which is something that's being pushed in legislation by someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, just because it's one of the ways that people think it can really solve food insecurity and climate change in the way that we farm and everything. So.
Right. Well, you know, what I think is missing from and I think AOC has done a pretty good job with this, but the idea where there's industries that will grow out of the flight to end climate change that we don't even know of yet, and that there's a huge economic incentive to end climate change as well. I think again, messaging this. I think that you could do a better job messaging what the Green New Deal does, because we're allowing the opposition to demonize it and say you can't eat hamburgers and you're not going to be able to drive your car, and when the sun doesn't shine anymore, the electricity is going to go out, which is all nonsense and we know it. And so messaging the Green New Deal, I think, is really, really important. Let's try this for a second. So free education is something that people are talking about now. Free education, free college. A lot of people don't like to hear that word free. But let's change the way we message this for a second. So there was a time in this country where we didn't have public education, where only wealthy people sent their kids to school. And when the concept of free education or public education came up, there were a lot of people pushing out against it, calling it socialism, saying that this is the end of the country, we shouldn't do this. Passed public education, helped create a middle class, more people end up going to college, it actually helps grow the country, so we know this. So now over the last couple of years, what are we talking about? We're talking about universal pre-K. Why? Because only wealthier people could send their kids to pre-K. So we want to give that leg up to everyone. And that is a concept that people are starting to understand. In New York, they passed universal pre-K. Pre-K, I'm not sure about New Jersey.
It's here in New Jersey as well.
And so where we need to start talking about is not free college, but an additional 2 years of public education. That's a very different thing, because people understand that back when we started public education, you got to grade 12, that was enough to have a high school education, you can get a job in a factory somewhere, and actually have a middle class life. You can't do that anymore. So an additional 2 years of public education sounds a lot better than free college. It doesn't sound like a handout. It sounds like something that is a necessity, again, for this country to continue to grow. So this is why I think the new Green Deal, I just think we need to message it a little differently, again, so you won't allow the other side to demonize it. But again, I'm a firm believer that we need to do something about climate is changing rapidly, and one thing that we need to talk about is, you talk about immigration. Migration from climate change is going to be, in the next couple of years, one of the biggest issues that we're going to have to deal with. And if you think that the immigration discussion now is a tough one, wait for a few more years, when you have entire countries that can no longer, that people can no longer inhabit those countries. They're going to have to go somewhere. So I think it's something that we all should focus on. I just wish that we would do a better job messaging it.
So Tom, on behalf of Kane University, I want to thank you. I've known Tom Colicchio since his Little League baseball days, and we were talking about them in the back room, right, Tom?
Well, Kane, when I was growing up in Elizabeth, it was Kane College. And two things that I did at Kane College. There was a summer hockey program that my brother reminded me that we played in here, believe it or not. Also, I got to see Jerry Garcia play at the cafeteria, which was an amazing show that is actually a record that is out now. Or I'm dating myself, a record, listen to that.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to see what this college turned into a university and what's happening here, and that the educators, the social justice department here, realize that hunger is an important issue, and they're really focused on it for the entire year. And I want to thank all of the students that are giving their energy to running the food pantry here and to really sort of making hunger an important part of your year. So thank you very much.
Let's
Thanks for
thank
having
Tom
me.
Colicchio.